Philadelphia is steep in broadcast history. From the early pioneering days of broadcasting in the 1920s to today, Philadelphia has always been at the forefront. The Delaware Valley has been home to some of the best local programming in the country, starting with the early soap operas and children's shows to pioneering the best news formats in the country. Much of it all began right here. From radio announcers to television personalities, cameramen to directors, these were the broadcasters that burned out the airwaves. These were the pioneers of Philadelphia broadcasting.
Hello and welcome to Pioneers of Philadelphia Broadcasting. I'm Mike Strug, and with us today is W. Carter Merbreier. May not mean anything to you, that name. Captain Noah is the name we know you by, and we have followed you for many, many years. And
I don't know who I am. I mean, Captain Noah is really a part of my life. I'm as much Captain Noah as I am in Carter Merbreier.
And as we look around your apartment, that's clear. There's so much, including the set from Channel 6.
Isn't that great?
Yeah. Tell us about that show. How did that show begin?
It began as an idea. The Philadelphia Council of Churches had some airtime that Channel 6 gave them. And they asked all the clergy to make an application to do a show and what they would do a show for. And so it went to Channel 6. The prospect, I came up with an idea for a show built around animal puppets, and we built a little set out of cardboard. And so then it was given. I was the only one won the competition.
Now, and you were an ordained minister.
I was an ordained minister. I was the only clergyman, Mike, that got into it to do it, because years later I found out I was the only applicant to do a show.
You won by default.
Where you got paid nothing, and you had to pay all the expenses yourself. The station paid nothing for 3 years to have Captain Noah. And they gave it to Lou Klein. Well, thank God for Lou Klein, because he opened the doors to Nat Elkins, who built a set of more than cardboard, and that's how it started.
Let's clarify for people, Lou Klein was the program director back then. He also happened to be a professor at Temple University, because he was my professor at one point and was also working at Channel 6. So he took over, and it went on from there.
Well, he was one of a kind. He really was. I can't say enough about what Lou Klein meant to our show to get it off the ground. And then we started it commercially in 1970, August of 1970, we started to do the show for bread. They gave us bread to do the show, and we did it then for the next 27 years, or really the next 30 years.
The show lasted from 67, when you were getting no bread, to 1970, when you started being paid for it, and then ran through 1994?
1994, I guess, we retired, and then they replayed it on the digital channel, which Channel 6 had, and I guess still has. So I can say with surety that we were on the air for at least 30 years.
And an institution in Philadelphia. I told you the story earlier. I was talking to my son, who I had brought to the studio at one point. He met you, and he was in heaven. It is one of his fondest memories. He's now 45 years old. This is when he was probably 7 or 8 years old, and he got to slide down that slide. Tell us about the slide. That was part of the set here.
Well, I went to my doctor because my ankles started to ache, and I thought I had arthritis in my ankles. And one morning, my doctor, Paul Mock, was watching the show and realized that I was hitting a cement floor with a slide that was designed for a swimming pool. So that's when we went to steps.
So you
And
eliminated
they put
the
the
song.
steps in, and if you watch the show closely, Oskar Pinsky, who put the steps in with Nat Elkins, when they put the steps in,
These are the set
had
builders.
a couple of inches left over. So they just made one of the steps a couple of inches higher than all the others. And everybody that went up those steps tripped. You can see that step to this day with the marks on it of where people tripped over that step.
Let's talk about the show itself. There are no shows like that today.
Well, it's a shame there aren't, Mike. It's a shame there aren't shows like that. Do you mind if I take my hat off?
Not at all.
It's a shame there are not shows like. We did a show because we were interested in the children. For 30 years, we did a show where we tried to teach the children the fundamentals of life, as everybody did with their children's shows all over the United States, with very little funding. And then we came along, and I insisted on principles being fulfilled, and Lou Klein, the aforementioned Lou Klein, said, we want you to keep the show not goody-goody, but if you're trying to teach the children, we're all for that. And he was echoing George Kohler in Ambassador Annenberg.
George Kohler was the general manager. Walter Annenberg owned Triangle Publications and owned, at that point, WFIL Channel 6.
And one thing we have to know is that when Annenberg had his own private interests again, and one day at Easter, I was giving out Easter eggs at the side door, and the biggie was coming in that side door, and he got a little Easter egg.
Oh.
And it's the only thank you note I got for an Easter egg was from Annenberg.
Wow. And you felt, partly I suppose because you were a minister, you felt an obligation to more than simply play some cartoons, that there was a purpose to the show.
Well, we did the show because of children, because I was always guaranteed that I would be able to present a good show for children. And as long as we were able to do that, I was going to stay on the air. And every general manager assured me that I would only leave when I decided to leave. I remember one general manager mentioned this. He said, how long are you going to keep up Captain Noah? I said, well, he was 650 years old when he built the Ark. And I was informed by the general manager that I shouldn't believe my own press. But I learned a lot of stuff from, and the person that I learned the most from was Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder's sound man was a boy that grew up with us, and he was appearing at the Old Valley Forge Music Fair.
Right.
And I had a chance to sit down with him. He invited me to have dinner with him, and they said, would you like me to hear the show? I said, well, I'd like to stay, but I've got to get back to the station. As you knew from your career, many times you had to get back. And so he said, do you have, in those days, to have, you were able to pick up all the small stations. And Steve said, can you get 1160 or some number he gave me on your car radio? I said, yes. Well, he said, then you can tune in to the microphone that we have on Stevie Wonder and his hearing, because he's blind.
Right.
So I tuned it in, and sure enough, I was getting the concert through the little microphone that he had. And I was also getting the messages they were sending to Stevie Wonder.
From the
Like
director.
there's a girl on the stage. She's to your left. Move a little more to your left. Oh, she has flowers. She's almost there. Move a little more to your left, Steve. A little bit more. Put your arms out. There, she's almost in there. And years later, I realized when he was on with Patti LaBelle in New York, that somebody was telling him he was too close to the spotlights, that he shouldn't go any further because he couldn't see. And a lot of times in life, I learned that we should listen to the voice that we hear giving us advice. As Stevie Wonder always had to get advice from his floor director.
We should all have a floor director.
Yeah, we all do. If we only tuned in and listened to what our floor director said. So I learned from Stevie Wonder, and everybody that came in, whether we shared Dorothy Hamill or the astronauts or anybody that came in to do our little rinky-dink local children's show, I learned something from them that I would be able to teach the children.
Your show was not rinky-dink. It was the show in Philadelphia.
Yeah, but it was just a little local show. We had a lot of shows around. We had some wonderful shows in Philadelphia that reached out to children, from Pete Boyle, who tried to reach out to them. We had talented people at Channel 6 who came from children's shows like Dave Roberts, Dave Boreanaz.
Yeah, let's back up for a second. The Pete Boyle you're talking about was the local TV personality,
yes.
Not Peter Boyle, his son.
Who was it was at the zoo and then went to Hollywood. The same thing with Dave Roberts.
Right.
Is his son, Boreanaz, uses a family name. Dave was a great talent. And Sally Starr, who was no more than a couple of bags filled with mail, used to try and teach the children the good things about life that they should do. And we've lost all that. Now kids can tell you the different guns they can use on the video games, the caliber of those guns, and we wonder why the kids growing up in the generous present generation that have no more children's shows, why they're all getting into trouble. I think it's because the stations have been bulldozed by the government. The FCC wanted to make sure we didn't touch the products that happened to be on our show because they didn't want the children influenced. I lived in a day when Popeye had a group try to get him off the air because he was too violent. Boy, would we lived in those days. And the Roadrunner was too violent. So I'm glad that people are looking backwards a little bit, and we're going through the age of looking backwards to the age when we tried to do something good every day, whether it was Mrs. Noah's Garden, God love her. Every time I was doing a project at my thing, a balancing act or whatever it was at my workbench, she was down there with Mum Up the Monster, because even then we tried to teach children to clean up their trash. And after being down there for almost 30 years, she got bored. And one day she just broke and started to play with my legs. So for years I always had to wonder what was going to happen next, whether a shoe was going to come off. I think the crew all knew.
She turned it into a guessing game for you.
A guessing game.
And by the way, we're talking about your late wife, Patricia, Pat Merbreier.
Oh, she was wonderful. I was so lucky to have her not only as a wife, but also as a puppeteer. And Elaine Godshall, who is also retired, but I also see Elaine, and she still works with me. And everybody is kind of stuck together from our gang.
That's terrific. Go through some of the people. You started to mention Dorothy Hamill and some others who have been there. Who else appeared on your show with you?
Well, a lot of people, they ask me a quick question I have to think about.
Well, maybe who struck you? Who do you remember?
Who do I remember?
Who had an impact, perhaps?
Well, I can remember, as I think, I don't know if I mentioned that Columbo,
Peter
Falk, and Pat were the same age. They celebrated their birthdays the same day. They both died the same day of the same disease, Alzheimer's. So you never know where you meet somebody later in life. Yeah. We were so lucky. I can't believe that the people that came on our show that did. We had astronauts, we had Hollywood stars, some of them like Pat's chili con carne more than they like being on the show. So we had a lot of them for dinners at our house. So she was not only the puppeteer, but also a hostess.
Another person who appeared pretty regularly on the show was former Phillies catcher Tim McCarver.
Tim McCarver, he was wonderful. He came on for years. He was wonderful, and he brought the Philly Fanatic in for his first appearance. He appeared on our show on a Thursday. Then he appeared publicly on a Saturday, the next Saturday night, the first thing of spring. Pat and I sort of felt that we were godparents to the Philly Fanatic. And the one thing with Tim McCarver, who came in every day, he always preached, keep your eye on the ball. And in his biography, he credits appearing on a show called Captain Noah. Another wonderful person was Charles Barkley. He came in on his own time. Mm-hmm. He's the only person I know that came on, and somebody wrote, can't you find anybody better than Charles Barkley? I said, not that would talk to children about falling down and getting up and starting over again. We tried to get Jesus of Nazareth, but he wasn't available as often as Charles Barkley was.
How did Charles react to that?
I never told him. This is the first he'll hear this.
He would be very proud, I suspect.
He was a wonderful guest. The press, a lot of press that people get, they don't deserve. And speaking of Bernie's, like our Bernie at Channel 6 today, Bernie Parot was also a wonderful guest on our show. We went out to the arena after he retired, where he did a show about and he had his daughter, and she got sick. And we knocked at the door, and I said, wait till this woman comes to the door and sees Captain Noah that wants to use her bathroom. And this woman came to the door and she said, oh, Bernie Parot.
Oh, that's how she remembered.
Right over top of my shoulder. It was Bernie she was thrilled to see.
Well, there was a brief moment in time here in Philadelphia where there was no one bigger than Bernie Parot.
Yeah, they're the biggest people in Philadelphia were Mike Strug, number one.
Yeah, right.
Then there was John Facenda.
Yeah.
And then there was Sally Starr. And do you remember Phil Sheridan?
Oh, sure.
Phil Sheridan was radio and television.
Did the weather?
Through Western Weather.
Yeah.
Western
Savings Fund.
These were the people that
I don't deserve to be on that same hand, by the way.
Huh?
I don't deserve to be on that same hand with Sally Starr and
your humility shows.
Well, okay, let's not go there. You know, one of the things we heard in the newsroom, where we weren't paid very much, We had heard that people like you and Sally Starr, who were the real stars at Channel 6 then, that you perhaps weren't paid as much as we might have thought, and instead were told, well, we're not paying you a lot, but you're getting exposure, and therefore you can make a lot of money in personal appearances. True?
Well, we made a lot of money in personal appearances. I remember when I started, I was surprised at how low the salary was that I was being paid in Captain Noah. And I was told that I would double that amount of money in 1 year just in personal appearances. So I remember the program director saying to me, so you see, you more than doubled your money. You doubled your money in appearances, just like I told you. Right? I said, no, I didn't double my money. I didn't tell the man at the station that I more than quadrupled it. I didn't tell him at all. But it's just like seeing the anchor to the news there at the elevator that we were both so familiar with. He said to me, he said, you make more money, Captain Noah, than anybody in this building. Maybe I did.
And maybe you deserved it.
Sell. I did a lot of shoe store openings, I got to tell you. I did 1 year, one day I had to rent a helicopter when I did 4 stores in one day and parades. 4 stores and parades in one day. I had a helicopter to get me down to the Delaware Peninsula. So yes, that's true. Our salaries weren't great, but we did pretty well on appearances.
Let's talk about the show itself. I mean, it was a big set, and it must have been difficult. You were talking about how they built the set. How difficult was it to plan the show every day? You were on every day.
Well, you know from your experience how difficult it was. We did an hour to an hour and a half every day. And then we did a show for Saturdays that was syndicated. So we really did 5.5 shows. The syndicated show didn't have cartoons in it. Thank God for the cartoons, because that gave us 3 minutes to get the next thing up.
And the next thing, did you write scripts? Did you say, okay, well, we're going to do this or we're going to do that? How did you plan the show?
Well, you have a nerve asking that question.
I'm sorry.
You didn't have any scripts. You went out to people. You put a microphone out. You just did it because you were a pro at what you did, and that's all I did. We didn't have a script. We had to keep on time. People don't understand today how professional is somebody that is there on time and that you can depend on. That makes it a professional.
But you did have to decide when the floor manager gave you the cue, you had to have something to say. Did you talk about it before you went on the air? You certainly had to talk about it with Pat and Elaine.
Pat and Elaine, yes, they were. They were the advisors. They were ones that kept me straight and kept the show going. I was just a good-looking, dashing, talented, very humble captain.
All those things. Now, one of the things that you did, and now we're pretty familiar with green screens and chroma key, but back then, where you would do something in front of the screen and they would project. Talk to me about that, the high wire act and that sort of thing.
I think we were the forerunners of the use of chroma key. Chroma key is that magic background, electronic background, that's now used by newscasters for the moving maps and everything behind them. We use chroma key for some wonderful things. I was at the top of the circus tent because of chroma key. Kids thought I was maybe 60 feet up in the air. I was really only 18 inches walking on a platform that was all chroma key. I would be able to go into an English cottage behind a chroma key picture electronically it was a picture. All the other stuff was blue. I could be under the water in blue in a fish tank. We did so many things on chroma key. The biggest mistake I made, there used to be in the old days, you'd remember, there used to be what they called sponsors booths.
Mm-hmm.
There's now all news booths up there.
It was up in the
So
kind of the second story of the studio,
Yeah,
so
it was in the
sponsors could
second
look down
story.
and see what was happening.
And so I forgot about the sponsors booth that was way up there. And I was in this chroma key of an English it doesn't matter, an old farm. I was behind the hedgerow, and you could see the farm behind me, the hedgerow in front of me. Because Steve Sachs or somebody put up this chroma key thing in front
He was a
of me.
troublemaker, that Steve Sachs.
Well, so whatever. So I was behind there and you couldn't see it. I thought it'd be funny, so I took my pants off.
Oh.
So I was behind, you couldn't see it behind us that I didn't have any pants on. And so I was behind this chroma key flat and in this picture. So finally we went to either cartoon or to an ad, and I stepped out and the crew almost fell over. Particularly we had the first woman director in the world, I think.
Was that Susan Drake?
Susan Drake. She almost fell off her chair that I stepped out from behind this chroma key scene without any pants on. So finally the laughter died down. And I still heard laughter going on.
Oh.
Somebody, without telling me, had brought in a Girl Scout troop
Oh.
and put them up there in the sponsors booth. I didn't know they were there. To this day, there are still women in their 60s and 70s saying that they saw Captain Noah with his pants down.
Without any pants. a distinction for you, sir, I might add. Do you have any regrets? Is there anything you wish you had done with the show that you might?
Yes. I left television, hoped they would be taken up by a more modern era of TV. Unfortunately, it hasn't been. I got to give Channel 6 credit. They continued children's shows longer than anybody else. And I still think that that's why we're part of the reason why we're number one, is because the sets got frozen to 6 with Sally Starr and Captain Noah and everything we did for children for years. But growing up with, what was your question again?
Any regrets? Anything you should?
Oh,
have?
the regrets. Things that I should have done. I should have had more blacks on. I wasn't from the hood, so I didn't understand the hood. I could try and understand the hood, but you have to be from the hood. I would go to a black church, and I got to give credits. They didn't notice that the hand, taking their little hand, was not the same color as theirs. I did, but they didn't. Thank God, Captain Noah was black or white, whatever you want to make him. He was almost colorless. But I regret that I didn't reach out more to the black community. I regret that I didn't reach out more to the Spanish community. Had I had it to do again, I would have taken courses in Spanish. I would have done more. We tried to do a couple of things, but it was feeble. I was trying to be something I wasn't. I regret that I didn't reach out to the children of other backgrounds like I should have done.
So we hear so much about diversity today. It was not a byword back then.
We did diversity in American folklore all the time. We were doing the Battle of Wounded Knee 40 years before the Battle of Wounded Knee became a national thing with the American Indian. We did the Bloomer Girl going around the world. We did women's rights long before it became the thing to do until diversity. We did every day on our show and never got credit for it.
Yeah, but did not reach out as much as perhaps you wanted to.
Well, we reached out to the children, and that's all that matters. We weren't reaching out to the adults. A lot of kids today who have become big in show business, in Hollywood, grew up with Captain Noah. I didn't expect them to sit down and write me a letter. Thank you very much for Captain Noah. They probably don't even remember Captain Noah and their child. But I know I was in their life, and I had an opportunity. You'd be surprised how many of today's musical stars grew up with Captain Noah.
Well, if they haven't sent you a thank you note, let me, on their behalf, say thank you. Thank you for all you did for all the children of Philadelphia, and you have made all of us who are fellow broadcasters very, very proud. And thank you for spending time with us today. And the hat does it, says goodbye.